Greetings from Seattle, Washington, in the heart of the great Pacific Northwest. I am Jason Rigdon, and you are listening to the Podcast of Mystery, the show that always leaves you with more questions than answers. The podcast where I talk with extraordinary guests about the paranormal, the strange, and the unknown. Over the 4th of July weekend, you may have seen a certain viral bumper sticker on social media about Mothman's erotic adventures at Denny's. On this episode, I have the creator of that bumper sticker. I also have the real truther on this episode. We will be talking about the secrets they don't want you to know about COVID-19. But first, I want to tease you with some information about Friday's episode. On episode number 21, I'll have a man that claims to be Noah the Time Traveler. Noah was a viral sensation a couple of years ago, with his YouTube videos getting millions of views and reaction videos getting millions more. I'm sure you've seen or heard of him. He did a bunch of media appearances on the news all over the world. He had cell phone footage of Las Vegas from 2120. Like I said, he was a legitimate viral sensation. The only problem, of course, was that the whole thing was a complete hoax. And Noah will be on the next episode of the Podcast of Mystery to tell us the truth, or at least a version of it. No other podcast has been able to get Noah to agree to an interview. This is a Podcast of Mystery exclusive. Don't miss my interview with Noah the Time Traveler. This is a very unique peek into the shadowy but highly profitable world of fake paranormal videos.
Hello, my name is Hannah, and I am the owner and main person behind the Etsy shop, WhatWouldMothmanDo. We sell a lot of, as you can guess, Mothman encrypted-based items, but specifically we have a focus on items promoting LGBTQ identities, focusing on LGBTQ plus identities, and a lot of the proceeds and of some of the items end up going to organizations that of causes that we believe in. And yeah, it's been really fun to make this stuff and meet a lot of, I'll say, interesting people within the cryptid community.
So what kind of motivated you to start this project?
That's a long story, and I love telling this story. So in 2018 or 2019, I don't quite remember, I watched the BuzzFeed Unsolved Mothman video. It wasn't my first exposure to Mothman, but it was the first time I heard about the festival. And I told my friends instantly, I want to do this. We're going. We got to do this. We got to see Mothman. We got to go to this festival. And we began fundraising. And we thought, okay, maybe we can do an Etsy shop. Maybe we can sell bath bombs. And we sell like cryptid themed bath bombs and stuff like that. And I kind of became the main person doing it just because I'm a really type A person. So I was kind of organizing it. And I just got really good at it. And then we made the money. And then the festival was canceled in 2020. So I suddenly had a huge, well, I'm going to say huge because it was more money than I expected to make from this thing, a huge store on top of my 40-hour-a-week day job. And the question was, okay, so who owns this store? What's going to happen with it? And so I was like, all right, this is my store now, if you guys are okay with that. And we could keep making items and we could do some good and we could donate a part of the proceeds to different charities. And I could just continue raising money and meet our road trip goal. The road trip I'm actually really excited about. We will be doing, it's going to be a 7-person, well, maybe 6, but 7 if the person who, my friend from Australia, is able to make it, which depends on quarantine laws right now. The vaccinated and stuff, it's just a matter of like, getting them over here and not needing to quarantine when they get back because they have a bunch of advisories. But it's going to be a 7-person road trip in one van across the country, stopping at tourist traps and mystery shacks and places along the way. And it's going to take, I think, 7 days to get to West Virginia. And then we're going to drive back. And I am so freaking excited. And by drive back, I mean, I live close to the West Coast. So, that whole route is a big route, and we're going to be camping along the way. We're going to be stopping at cabins and hotels, and I have a huge, well-organized list of places to stop, and a lot of it is cryptid related, and a lot of it's just cool places. Like in San Angelo, there's a brothel museum I really want to see. It's just interesting stuff. in the US. So that's what made me begin this shop. And all of my friends are queer. I know that like on TV, it's a group of straight people and they have one token gay friend. But let me tell you, for most gay people, at least most out gay people, that's not the case. We have one token straight friend, and they're not coming on this trip. Um, and so it was a good idea for us to make items that reflected that, um, queer and non-binary Mothman, um, lesbian Nessies, things like that. And when we began, people were telling us, this seems like a bit of a cash grab. What's the overlap between cryptids and being queer? Like, is there really a point to this? And there absolutely is. Like, sorry, I'm still talking, but I just really hyped about the concept of cryptids being this like outsider to society, something people are scared of and don't understand. Um, and that a lot of people don't think exists. Uh, and being a non-binary person myself, where I hear from people that I don't exist, I think there is a parallel to be seen in this, and I like to celebrate that instead of lampooning it with the items that I sell.
And so you be documenting this fantastic trip, like for I suppose as we do post everything on social media nowadays.
It depends. A lot of the places we're driving through won't have any freaking signal. This country's so big, and so much of it has no cell phone signal. It's something I'm accounting for. But yes, I might. I'm also I work for a newspaper. I might be writing a column about it, like a blog post about it, which I'm really excited about. Um, and yeah, I'm really, really hype. It's gonna be at the very least interesting. And I'm still kind of panicking that something could go wrong. After all, this is a trip I've built up in my head for 2 to 3 years. So if it all goes wrong, then it'll really go wrong, and I don't want that. Um, but yeah, I think it's gonna be okay. I have it really over planned. Worst case scenario, no one has any fun because we have such a strict schedule. I've kind of told people if you leave your phone in Missouri, it belongs to Missouri now. We're gonna keep driving. We have a schedule to keep people.
I respect that. That's great.
Yes.
So could you tell me a little bit about maybe some of your favorite products?
I can tell you what my best-selling product is because it's File Landslide.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So my friend Fax, who was one of the artists on my store, back when we were still new, made this little Mothman, just like of him with his hands up. It's very fun. And so I put it on a few items. I put it on keychains and pins, and I put it on some bumper stickers as well. And I put it on this one bumper sticker kind of as a joke, thinking, people probably won't buy this. And that bumper sticker is one that says, Mothman ate my entire ass at a Denny's. And I have sold hundreds of them because Fex's art is on it. Every artist who contributes art to my store, by the way, gets a cut. Like on this item, it's a 20% cut, but on items that like fully feature the art, it's a 40% cut of every item. So I am making sure that the queer artists that contribute to my store get a big cut of the proceeds from every item sold. But yeah, I never anticipated that to be my biggest item, but by hundreds of items, it is that bumper sticker. People want the world to know that that Mothman is a slut and he's eating all of their asses. I don't believe in Mothman personally, but if he is real, he's a slut and he's eating everyone's asses. So there you go. Aside from that, I really like my cryptid bath bombs. I like the concepts. Like we have a Bigfoot one that's like it's brown with brown like sparkles. Environmentally biodegradable glitter, by the way, for everything. And it smells like pine and rain and campfire. It's a quote unquote manly smell. But I love it very much. It's like my favorite it's my favorite bath bomb in the collection just because, it's a scent that matches the theme and it goes nicely. And yeah, I just like all of them. Like we have a Nessie one that smells like the ocean. We have a Jersey Devil one that my concept was it smells like the Pine Barrens in Jersey. And The Mothman one is a bit less on theme, but it's more like pomegranate and sandalwood, and like it's more like musky, dark, mysterious smells, I guess. I don't know what's a mysterious smell. Everything's arbitrary, but stuff like that. Oh, the ghost one, it kills me. It smells like cotton sheets. It has a fragrance oil called Nighttime, and what's the last smell in it? Well, I don't remember, so I guess it wasn't that good. Oh, I think it's like violet or lilac. Yeah, it's like some flower, but I love that it smells like cotton sheet, like a ghost. I just think that that's really fun. I'm way too proud of those. I'm like, isn't this neat? And it's not that neat, but it's my favorite. It's my favorite thing.
And how has kind of the cryptid community reacted to this store?
Ooh, it's a mix.
Yeah.
It really depends on where I promote it. On Reddit, not the best.
Really?
Yeah, it's interesting how many people believe in Bigfoot but don't believe in non-binary people. It's interesting and a little bit in a really negative and sad way. But it is what it is. On Instagram, I've had more luck. I've had more people who are willing to like promote me and who really are hype about what it is I'm selling. By the way, you're gonna hear the background noise just because I'm in a house with multiple people. But yeah, it's been mostly good. I'm gonna say that. I did post a bumper sticker that said Bigfoot is gay, and if you don't believe me, find him and ask him.
Yeah, I love that one.
And someone yeah, oh, thank you. And someone commented, "No, he's not." And I said, "Did you ask him?" And they're like, "No, he's not. He couldn't continue as a species if he wasn't." And I'm like, "Buddy, I don't know how to tell you this, but it's fine." And then I was just like really biting my tongue to be like, he's not real anyways, guys. But because I personally am a skeptic, but like not everyone in my group is, obviously. I have some people who really do believe in all this. And I think that that's great. I think it's fun to believe in this stuff. As long as it's not hurting anyone. I think believing in Bigfoot is harmless. But yeah, so I'm gonna say it's been a mixed bag. I've had some people who really resonate with it. I recently posted a bumper sticker that said Mothman eats transphobes. And it has like blood splatters on it and a trans flag. And I was asking someone, and I was like, is this too much? And they were like, well, we're gonna go there, you might as well lean in. So and I've had people who freaking love it, and I'm really hyped about that. I've found my audience. I think I just got to remember what my audience is. And my audience is people who are passionate about cryptids and who maybe feel a little bit like cryptids themselves because of their identities and because the way the world treats us. So, it's cathartic to have a bumper sticker that says Mothman eats homophobes and transphobes. I think it's cathartic and it's fun, and I think it's harmless because Mothman could never, to be serious and really a Debbie Downer, Mothman could never eat more homophobes or transphobes, and transphobes have, killed trans women of color in the streets. It's just not going to happen. It's dangerous in a lot of places to be gay or trans. It just simply is. So I think if my store provides release or catharsis or joy to someone who's in a dangerous situation, which I know that it has because I've gotten DMs from people who have experienced that, I think that that's a good thing. And I stand by everything I put up. So, yeah.
So I have to ask, because this is the podcast of mystery. You said you're a skeptic, but have you ever had any kind of paranormal experience yourself of seeing anything, whether it's Bigfoot or a UFO or a ghost?
Well, I guess a UFO, but that doesn't mean it was an alien UFO. It just means it was unidentified. One time I went stargazing with my partner, and we saw these 3 dots kind of moving across the sky, and I was like, they're in Orion's belt. It's just moving, and then it disappeared. And we were like, what is that? Could it be a shooting star? Could it be this? And then we remembered we're close to a military base. Like, it's probably just like a drone. Like, we don't need to, like, there's 80 million things it could be. Do I think aliens are real? Yes. Do I think that they visited Earth? I don't think so. I just think it would be narcissistic to think that, like, in a galaxy and in a universe this expansive, we're the only ones. Um, but I don't personally believe in them. As far as like ghosts go, I don't know. I don't really know because a lot of stuff I remember was from when I was a kid, and kids, I don't know, man, kids are dumb. At my stupidest age, yes, I might have seen ghosts. And also, let me see, what else? What else? Hmm. I'm a pretty big skeptic right now. Like if you watch BuzzFeed Unsolved, I'm like a shaniac, on terms of that spectrum. Where I just if I see evidence of it that I can believe and that isn't, possible to be fabricated, I'll believe in it. But in terms of ghosts specifically, I think it's much easier to look at something and think this is what could be causing it than to assume, oh, the dead walk the earth. you know so that's a bit rough, but yeah, I don't quite think so.
Yeah, well, it does sound like you saw a UFO, the UFO kind of thing that I've been frustrated
yes,
lately.
Technically,
yes,
I did see a UFO. That does not mean that I saw anything supernatural.
Yeah, because a UFO is like the most, well, this probably hurt people's feelings, but the most mundane of all the so-called paranormal things, because like it literally is just something up in the sky. I don't know what it is.
Uh-huh.
That's
If a frisbee whizzes by me, but I didn't quite catch it, and it could be a bird or it could be a frisbee, that's a UFO.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I've been very frustrated lately with all these people kind of equating UFOs with aliens, and it's like, well, like the whole idea the U.S. government is confirming the UFOs are real. I'm like, who ever thought the UFOs weren't real? Like, everybody knows somebody that's seen something. Like, it doesn't mean that it's like little green men that are like stealing my cows.
That just means that they saw something, but they don't know what it is. That doesn't mean that they didn't say we have aliens locked up in a glass case in Area 51. They said, yeah, sometimes we saw a thing and we didn't know what the thing was. But I think that's everyone. I think that's every human being to ever.
Yeah, and I feel like as soon
it.
as you start saying it's a spaceship containing aliens, it's no longer a UFO, right? Mm-hmm. You're saying what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, that is not a UFO anymore. That is a spaceship. I like that we're on the same wavelength of being just like exasperated.
Well, I just feel like I'm always disappointed. Like I see a headline saying, "Oh, the government has this information on UFOs." I'm like, "Oh, that's good. Oh, it's the same video I saw 2 years ago." It's
exactly. I will definitely say that there is one thing that has happened to me. Just to get a little bit spooky. So I do like ghost hunting. I've been ghost hunting in 8 different states, at cemeteries and at famously haunted locations, and I've never seen or found or documented anything. Maybe ghosts just don't like me. Maybe ghosts are just racist. I don't know, but they don't show up for me. It's very possible that like maybe I was doing something wrong, but again, I've never seen anything. The only thing that I kind of experienced, is in the what hotel was it? It was a hotel in Las Vegas. It was one that like the ghost adventurers were in, and they were obnoxious in it. There was a spot where they were like, I feel a headache. And I stood in that spot and I was like, no, you don't. Zach Bagans is the most annoying man on earth to me. Please bully me in the comments. If you disagree, it's fine. And what hotel was it? The hotel begins with a B. Biggins Hotel. So essentially, it was like this hotel that like a mobster had stayed in, and apparently it was just a lot of stuff like that. And I was walking around with what's it called, a spirit box, and I did get a sound bite that when I asked what's your name, it said something that was this is what it sounds stupid. It either said Jesus or it said Jaden. I don't know which. And again, those sounds are just nothing. But then at that exact moment, I got a spike in my EMF like reader. And I was like, we have a sound and we have a spike at the same time. What does that mean? And honestly, looking back, it doesn't mean shit because we have no evidence that ghosts can even manipulate EMF readers or spirit boxes. We just said that they could.
Yep.
just because they sometimes spike doesn't mean ghosts do it. So it's very arbitrary. But I will say that that is one piece of, I guess, quote unquote, technical evidence of something that I documented. But I don't think it's conclusive enough for me to think that the dead walk on the planet. So yeah, I guess the jury is out, and I might get a comment like, but that's evidence. You just said you don't have evidence of ghosts. And I said, no. I wouldn't say to that, no, I don't have evidence of ghosts. I have evidence that an EMF reader is spiked and that, a random sound generator said Jaden and or Jesus.
Yes, yes. No, were you like on an actual like ghost hunting expedition? It sounds like you had like, Ghostbuster gear with you.
Yes. So what it was, I told people at my job, I mentioned I worked for the newspaper, and I kind of told them I was going to be in Vegas. And I pitched this idea of ghost hunting at 5 different Vegas locations and seeing what I found. Again, I didn't find anything. One location was like an underground tunnel, and they were like, you hear voices and moaning inside. And I'm like, yes, it's a tunnel. It's a windy tunnel underneath the highway. Yes, you hear noise. And I like recorded the noise. One was the Westgate Hotel where like I guess Elvis supposedly haunts. And we checked the
Well, if you believe that Elvis is dead.
Yes. Uh-huh. Yeah. Uh-huh. So one of the places supposedly haunted is one of the elevators. So there's like a 2-minute sound bite of just me and my partner standing in in an elevator while Baby Got Back plays in the background. Just standing around like assholes waiting for something interesting to happen, and nothing happened. Maybe I didn't go in with a believing enough energy or believing enough vibe for the ghosts to feel welcome, but I did feel like an asshole just standing in this elevator with my equipment out. I did get one interview with a lady who I was like, oh, does Elvis haunt this place? And she straight up was like, no, and he married a child, so he's a pedophile. I'm not interested in him being a ghost. And if he was real, I'd kick his ass. And I was like, fuck yeah, okay, that's going in. I was just like, yeah, if we want to talk about it, we should mention that. I guess so.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was one of the funnest things I've done in my life is ghost hunting across wait, was it the Binion Hotel? Wait, I'm sorry. I know I'm still on. It was Binion's. It was the Binion's Hotel. Oh man, yes. So yes, it was the Binion Hotel in Vegas. The one that is, God, that episode of Ghost Adventures made me so mad because he was standing on the exact same staircase I was on, and he was just like, you feel the energies. And I didn't watch the episode until after I'd done the ghost hunting, and I was like, I stood on that same freaking staircase a month ago, and it was fine, Zach. If you're having recurring headaches, get an MRI, dude. Like it's fine.
Oh gosh.
Oh my god. You don't gotta put this in, but I'm just gonna talk about an episode of Ghost Adventures.
Yeah.
If you want, no, put this in. Fuck it. There's an
I will. Yeah, I love this kind of stuff.
There's an episode that takes place in this I believe a Chinese mining town in California. And the background music of the episode was full of gong music. Just kind of playing, I guess, quote unquote oriental noise the whole time. He interviewed this one town historian because I guess it's a town where there was like, I guess, a faction of like Chinese mobsters, Chinese mafia, selling opium there. At least that's what he said, though I take it with a grain of salt. And he asked the town historian, like, okay, tell me about the history of the town. And he was like, okay, so people were brought in to work on the railroad. This is what happened. They had awful work conditions, yada yada. And then he says, do you know of any deaths or murders that happened in the town? And the historian said, I don't know anything about that. And then the voiceover Zach says, what was this man? And I swear, maybe I'm remembering this wrong, but I feel like it zoomed in on his eyes. What was this man hiding from us? Like, because he's Chinese? And then they were talking around the town to people who have experienced it. And only the white people they talked to had experienced any kind of like haunting stuff. One lady said she was choked by a ghost. And then they would ask Chinese people and they'd be like, no, I haven't experienced anything like that. And then they would just like, do these ghosts not like outsiders? And I'm just like, dude, what are you doing? And that was the whole episode. It was just nonstop, like playing a gong whenever anything happened. It killed me. And I was dying laughing. And I was just like, how is this allowed? How is no one saying anything? And the reason is because Zach Bagans is a hack, and I would assume racist, and his audience, God, I'm gonna get people mad at me, whatever. His audience doesn't seem to care about that. But that's so awful. This was obviously like, this was a while before COVID when I saw this, and it's probably a rerun because I just watched it in like a hotel room because I don't have cable. And if I did, I wouldn't watch Ghost Adventures. And you know, yeah, I was baffled. I was dying laughing. I was like, you guys believe in this? And people were like, yeah. And then as I was going around Vegas trying to like find, you know, places to check, everyone was telling me go to the Zach Bagans Haunted Museum of Haunted Artifacts. And I was just like, I don't think so. I don't think I'm gonna spend $45. Even if it, yeah, I believe it's $45. Wow. It was $45 at the time, but let me check actually, because I want to be accurate.
I feel like for $45, I need to have an experience. Like,
yeah,
I want that creepy feeling when I'm going in the door. I'm like, ooh, I'm getting the what I forget what the weebie is. It the weebie-jeebies? Is that what it is? Heebie-jeebies.
Yes. Haunted Museum general admission is $48 right now.
Wow. All right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I laugh, but I'm such a sucker. I probably, if I was down there, I probably would totally go.
Good for you. I wouldn't. I would not, just because I don't want to give him money. He's just so obnoxious looking. He looks like a Zach. Is that you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? Like he has like the kind of spiky hair. He looks like a Zach. I shouldn't be bullying people. I'm not gonna bully his appearance, but I will say he's racist. How about that?
So, not that I mean you can continue to talk about Zach if you want, but I'm kind of wondering.
No, it's fine.
do you have any kind of like favorite cryptid? Like we're talking about seeing these ghosts, like would there be, or even one that you wish you could see? I mean, saying hypothetically that that would be possible.
Gosh, well, Mothman probably, just because I love how stories about him vary from he tried to eat a baby once to he's just a himbo vibing in a cave. I like the duality of man that we see there. I just like his vibe. And as we know, he is gay and trans, and there's nothing people can do about it. So I just love that about him. So Mothman's probably up there. But I also love Nessie. I think if any cryptid is real, it's probably going to be an underwater one, just because so little of our oceans and lakes and whatever have been explored fully. And they're tough to explore. So I would say that, like, I don't necessarily believe in any of them, but if one is real, it's probably in the ocean or in a big body of water. And also, I just have a running joke that Nessie is my girlfriend. And honestly, she is. We're in love, and one day I will dive headfirst into the loch and be with my beloved. And aside from that, I don't really think so. I mean, there's a lot of really interesting ones. The Jersey Devil has a special place in my heart because it was in these. Do you know the show Gravity Falls?
Yes. Yeah.
Gravity Falls is my favorite show of all time, and I know it's a Disney cartoon, but listen, there's a lot of humor that goes over kids' heads, and it's like Lost, but for kids. Like they have a bunch of stuff going on in the background and mysteries to solve. But they have a comic about two of the characters going on a hunt for the Jersey Devil, and that show just has such a soft spot in my heart, and I'll buy anything that Disney sells with it on. I don't really like the Disney Corporation as a whole, but I will buy Gravity Falls stuff. They do have my soul in that regard. But yeah, so the Jersey Devil is also, if I had to pick three, those are my three.
And if people want to visit your store, where should they go?
Okay. It's on Etsy. It's called WhatWouldMothmanDo. You can find it by Googling a sticker of Mothman eating your ass at Denny's. If you're specifically looking for that, I think I might be the only one who has them, to be frank. I'm also on Instagram as What Would Mothman Do, and I'm on Twitter as Mothman Deeds. What does Mothman do? Mothman Deeds. Um, I think that's just about everyone to contact me. I love to hear from people. Um, I love hearing how like they find an item really funny, or even, I've had people DM me asking, okay, can you make something with this theme, like a bisexual theme or queer theme, but make it really discreet so that my parents see it and they don't recognize that I'm trans or don't recognize that I'm bi, etc. And I love to work with people on stuff like that because, you know, in a world where people are told that they don't exist, or told that they're not real, or told that their identities aren't valid, I think being able to supply a safe space, or even just a small bit of joy through the items I sell is really important to me. So if you see stuff on my store and you have that thought of, oh man, I'd love to buy this, but I don't want someone I'm living with to see it, feel free to shoot me a message and I'll see what I could do.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. I'm very amused by them. And for our conversation, I really, really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thanks, dude. You have a good one. I hate to do this, but what I wanted to do, I'm Palestinian. And I know that a lot of people don't think Palestinian queer people exist, but they do. I wanted to just at the end throw in something like donate to the, donate to Palestinian funds and like name a specific one. If that was okay, could I just say that soundbite now?
Yes, 100%.
Let me find the specific relief thing.
Yeah.
By the way, I am a queer Palestinian artist. I am living in the US, but I am Palestinian in my roots. I want to give a quick plug to the Palestinian Children's Relief Fund. If you can donate to it, I myself have given a couple donations over the past few weeks, given the crisis in Gaza. A lot of children are being killed, and I think it's a good place to donate. All right, that's a soundbite. Just stick that in the end if you can.
I will. Yes. Yeah. If you like the show, would you please give the Podcast of Mystery a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts? It's a quick, free way to support this show. Right now, despite thousands and thousands of downloads, this show only has 4 reviews on Apple Podcasts. That's probably because I don't ask for reviews on every single episode like most podcasts. So, would you please help me get my numbers up and leave the Podcast of Mystery a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts? Show me you care about the show. Show me you want me to continue making new episodes by leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. This will help my ego. It will help new listeners discover the show, and it will show potential future guests that I have an active and engaged audience.
Hey, so I am known as the Real Truther on Twitter. I'm also on Facebook. And I've been fighting against anti-science misinformation, mostly about vaccines and anti-vaxxers and that world long before COVID started. And then naturally, when the COVID pandemic began, sort of branched out into COVID misinformation, which has inevitably led to misinformation about COVID vaccines. And then here we are. And I've been doing this for about half a decade now.
Wow. And I suppose before we should start, it doesn't feel like this would be necessary, but I just want to say that COVID is 100% real and the vaccine is safe. Just want to say that. When
fact check true.
Yes, there you go. So when, so we've been doing this for a long time. When, we first started getting those kinds of reports of, COVID, that this was going to be a big thing, did you kind of feel that, oh no, these kind of anti-vax people are going to just have a field day with this?
Yeah, so I sort of had mixed feelings of what was going to happen, but I knew initially they were going to be upset because the one thing that anti-vaxxers don't want is for anyone to take a virus seriously or a disease seriously. Their entire worldview is to downplay these vaccine preventable diseases such as measles and polio, and to try to spread misinformation about how they're not as serious as they're portrayed. So I knew immediately they were going to do the same thing with COVID, because they were probably thinking, like most of us were thinking, that, well, a vaccine is going to be developed and we're inevitably going to be against a vaccine even without any information. So we got to start by downplaying or denying the virus. And then when the vaccine comes, we can talk about how we don't need the vaccine because the virus isn't, as dangerous. And that's basically exactly what happened. What I didn't count on was that a large group of the population would join in with them. And then, of course, they would align with that group. And now it's become this huge group of not necessarily all COVID deniers. I think that word is a little tough to use sometimes, because, it's not just that these people don't necessarily deny the virus exists, although some do. There are what is known as germ theory deniers that literally deny the existence of infectious disease. And we'll see that a lot too. But most of the people that are downplaying, is probably a better word, the virus, are doing it for an agenda. And the agenda for anti-vaxxers is, of course, against vaccines.
So like you said, you've been doing this Twitter account for a long time. What kind of motivated you to start it?
Yeah, so I actually started, I don't have a science background. I'm not an expert, never claimed to be. And I'm actually married to a doctor. But what I started out seeing online, I'm a Jewish guy from Connecticut, and I started by fighting against Holocaust deniers, which or in the early 2000s, I started seeing a lot of that online, and it just became really offensive to me. And as someone who, like I said, grew up Jewish, visited the camps in Poland and went to the Holocaust Museum in Israel and DC many times, it was just something that really just shook me, that people were denying this history and how hateful it was and how dangerous it really was. And that sort of shifted me into other conspiracy theories and 9/11 conspiracy theories. And then when the tragedy at Sandy Hook hit in 2012, when that happened, to just see people spreading hoaxes and terrorizing the families who just saw their children be executed. It was just awful to see that. It just struck something inside me. And as I was debunking and attacking all these conspiracy theories, I inevitably moved into the vaccine world and anti-vaxxers. And there's a lot of mix and spillover between people who believe pretty much every conspiracy theory in the world, and then people who also deny vaccines, meaning they deny that they either work or that they're safe, and spread a lot of misinformation about them. An anti-vaxxer is not just someone who's against vaccines. Some of them don't believe that vaccines actually work. Or that, like I said previously, that the viruses are dangerous enough where we need to have a vaccine for them. So that's kind of what led me into the anti-vaccine world, and that's kind of where I was for years right before COVID hit, and I became just sort of someone who would try to seek out the misinformation that was influencing those on the fence. The one thing it's important to know about people who are truly in this sort of cult of anti-vaccine, in this world of anti-vaxxers, is that they're not really going to change their mind. And this is true of many conspiracy theorists. So you have to accept that right away. When you're fighting or engaging with someone who's truly anti-vax, there's zero chance, and really legitimately zero, that they'll ever change their mind. Now, I'm sure there's some outliers, but you're not doing it to actually convince them or change their mind. You're doing it because there are people who are truly skeptical. And there's a big difference between people that are either scared or skeptical of something like vaccines and people who are legitimately anti-vaccine. And those are the people that are reading these conversations. Those are the parents, the new parents who are on the fence and want the real information. And you're trying to, you're looking to them, not to the people you're engaging with. And that's kind of similar to what's happening now with COVID and the misinformation we're seeing from that.
So you've been doing this for a while. Do you have any tips for, like, what you're getting at kind of is like these average folks like me? We are on Facebook and we see, a cousin post something just scary and maybe a little bonkers. Like, how should we be handling that?
I mean, it's difficult. There's no easy answers. So basically all I can do is, present data, evidence, truth, facts. And, I'll give you some examples. So for example, one thing that I've sort of been focusing on, and we talk, is the lockdowns and the people against lockdowns who are misrepresenting the harms from lockdowns. And one of those harms for the entire year we heard, and the irony is that these same people were accusing people who were supporting or defending lockdowns and mitigation, like masks and distancing and capacity restrictions and, the banning of large events, all the things we did to try to slow the spread until a vaccine got here. they would accuse those people of fear mongering and spreading what they call panic porn, or, and they said a lot of that contributed to the fear and exaggerating what the virus really was and how dangerous it was. Now, they're not 100% wrong. There was definitely fear mongering on both sides. But what I've tried to do is show, well, you know what? The people that you're following are actually doing the same thing, but they're doing it about lockdown. They're spreading fear and panic and misrepresenting the dangers and the harms of all the mitigation we're doing, even going as far as to say masks could kill people and masks are dangerous and things like that. But one of the things that they did for lockdowns is they would talk about how they were going to lead to a tsunami, quote unquote, of suicides, that people would start killing themselves in high numbers because of the isolation, because of not being in school, whatever it is. Now, from the beginning, I refuted that claim because it didn't seem realistic. Number one, that it would just sort of suddenly happen. And two, we were getting data from a lot of places that had even stricter lockdowns in the United States, like New Zealand, where there was actually less excess mortality, actually lowered mortality, and the suicide rates were going down. And there were some great people online that were looking at this information about suicides. Tyler Black, who's someone on Twitter at Tyler Black 32, has been doing great. He's been at the front of this story from the beginning. And we knew at that point that suicide rates were going to either be stable or go down. Now, it turns out they went down to a 5-year low in the United States with the data that just came out. But I'll give you an example of this sort of misinformation that you have to refute online, or that I've been trying to. So, for example, there was an article that came out about a surge, quote unquote, of student suicides in Las Vegas schools, where they were going to have to try to close the schools simply because of this, quote unquote, surge. Turns out there were 18 suicides in this county, which was more than 10 from last year, but it's less than 20 that happened in 2018, which was more than 12 that happened in 2017. So basically, it was just standard variance, and there was no sort of causation that it was because of lockdowns. And then recently, we had this tweet go semi-viral in the anti-lockdown world, or in the pro-school opening world, about how there's this new tragic data on youth suicide in California, where there was a 24% increase in youth suicide during 2020 year, which sounds pretty bad. But then you look at it, and there's 134 youth suicides compared to 108 last year, which is a 26 difference. But there were actually more suicides in 2016. And in this chart that's being shown around, being spread, they intentionally hid the 2016 number. And then you start to evaluate it, you realize, wait a minute, if on all the 50 states, California had the 6th lowest youth suicide rate in the United States, where no lockdown. South Dakota, which opened its schools early, had the 3rd highest youth suicide rate. So then you start to think, wait a minute, is it that schools are being closed that are leading to suicides, or is it places that have high death rates from COVID, many of which could be relatives or even parents of children? Over 40,000 parents died. Children lost their parents in this pandemic, tragically, suddenly. That's also going to affect mental health. So again, that's not to say that mental health wasn't affected by closing schools. I've been supportive of opening schools, but the problem is people are arguing dishonestly and without sort of integrity, in my opinion, to be able to exploit something like a suicide statistic. That's just one example where people are spreading technically factual information, but misleading information. So there's a difference. It doesn't have to be factually wrong to debunk it, but if you're using it in improper context, that can be very dangerous.
What do you think is driving this kind of desire for misinformation, right? Because to me, it seems like it only exists because there's a consumer out there that wants it.
True. I think, this has been a really difficult year, as you know, for everyone, whether you're dealing with the consequences of the pandemic and losing people to the virus. I've lost 2 relatives. I know many people who are hospitalized. My wife's a doctor, has treated tons of COVID patients who sadly died. And here in California, where I live in Orange County, and her hospital in the winter, specifically December, January, was just flooded. She saw more death in those 2 months she's seen probably in her entire career. They were getting spillover from Los Angeles, which couldn't handle it. And, so that's tough to deal with that. And that takes a mental toll. But then there's a lot of people that have seen their lives be negatively affected by the losing their businesses, or their kids being out of school. These are all legitimate concerns and they're all real. The problem is, and those people are not necessarily affected by COVID, so they're angry. And then the other thing is you have a lot of time on your hands. So people that never been on social media, people that never been on Twitter, they're already upset. They're already angry. They come on the computer and they see this misinformation and it gets them even more angry. And then all of a sudden we have this whole group of people that are, campaigning against COVID mitigation, ironically making things worse where we might need more mitigation, more lockdown at the same time. And so it just becomes really messy. And right now, the social media world, and specifically Twitter, very toxic place. And sometimes I feel like I just need to take a break, because as much as there's some great people on there, and I've had some amazing friendships, and it's been great to have people supportive, there's also a lot of darkness, a lot of hate, a lot of anger, like I said. And, at a certain point, I'm not sure exactly, if we're reaching anyone, if we're doing anything positive, but I do believe we are. And, all I can do is try to just continue to spread truth. But why people are doing this, there's twofold. There's people that are doing it because, like I said, because they're angry and they're upset. And then there's people that are doing it. And these are the people I generally try to expose for their own personal gain, for their own profits. There's grifters and charlatans out there that are literally exploiting the pandemic for fame and money. And that is, to me, that is really horrible.
So when you are exposing these grifters online, how do they react to you? They can't be happy.
No, I mean, generally, that's why I'm blocked by many people, and many people continue to attack me over it. People don't like to see their worldview challenged, and I think, there's a lot of people that have safely believed things. The problem with social media is we're in our echo chamber all the time. And, I'm in my echo chamber. Most of my followers agree with what I'm saying. I mean, I'm sure I have some hate followers, but at the same time, most people that you interact with agree with you. So everyone's in there. And I hate that. That's why I go out and I try to go to other echo chambers, not just to challenge and engage, but also to learn. Unfortunately, they don't always like that. And if, I've literally asked simple questions like, wait a minute, this isn't exactly what you're saying it is, and have been blocked without any interaction. The psychology there is they just don't want to see what they believe challenged. They don't want to answer tough questions. And of course, what they do then is they'll just label someone who challenges them a quote unquote troll, who's not here to debate honestly, when in fact, that's all I want to do. But yeah, it's hard. They don't like it. And, like probably the biggest grifter out there is, I don't know if you've heard of Alex Berenson, who's now on Fox News all the time.
Oh, wow.
And he's gone. Yeah, he started off writing a book about the quote unquote dangers of marijuana, and how it's turning people into violent killers.
Oh, great.
And that's kind of what he was known for before this. Otherwise known as being a former reporter for the New York Times. He was once a legitimate New York Times reporter. He's also a fiction writer, but he had a very low amount of followers on Twitter. Now I think he has over 200,000 because he's basically gone full COVID downplayer denier. And right at the beginning, I predicted he would write a book. I remember tweeting about it when he was talking about how he has no plans to write a book. His new book comes out. I think it's like $30 on Amazon, I think next month. He's been selling ebooks. He's, like I said, going on Fox News, becoming really, famous off this. And there's others out there that I sort of expose a number of people who are using the pandemic to sell subscriptions to their websites. There's a group called Rational Ground. We call them Irrational Ground, who literally has subscriptions for $2,750 a month that they sell. And they've been...
Wait, what do you get for that?
That is a good question. I've been asking Justin Hart, the head of this group, for a while exactly what you get for that. And I so far have not gotten a significant answer. You can go on their website and check it out. They also have a mid-tier, though. That's only $250 a month. So for those of you who don't have a lot of money, you can still get your misinformation for a slightly lower price. But and this is someone that I believe he tweeted in March 2020, his prediction was 22,000 COVID deaths total for the United States. And, we have over 600,000. And this is someone I've actually sparred with on Twitter. I actually give him some credit because he hasn't blocked me. One of his claims is that missed vaccine appointments in the United States will cause mass deaths. And I keep asking him where are the polio outbreaks from all those missed vaccine appointments. And the irony is, of course, those aren't even from lockdowns. He blames them on lockdowns, but all pediatricians' offices were open and essential. And if people missed appointments, it was their own voluntary choice. He also argues that missed cancer screenings are because of lockdowns. And when I show him that occurred in places like Sweden and Japan, which didn't lock down, and that's just a consequence of the pandemic, I usually don't get a response. But so that's another person. There's a person out there known as Ian who spreads these very dishonest mask propaganda charts where he basically compares two states that both wore masks and shows that cases rose in both states. So that proves masks don't work, which it, of course, doesn't prove anything about mask efficacy because masks aren't 100% or worn 100%. And you're always going to see cases rise during a pandemic, even if masks were effective. And now he has a subscription service where you can pay, I think, upwards of $200 for a subscription to his new blog. And that's kind of what we're seeing. A lot of these people who got this big following off selling, they're spreading misinformation, are now selling that misinformation and trying, as the pandemic winds down, hopefully, and it appears it is, thanks to vaccination, we are going to see a lot of these people sort of transition to what they're going to do next. And a lot of them are going to use this fame, I think, to continue to, profit off it.
What are some of the most ridiculous things you've heard about COVID and the vaccine?
Well, so that's a good question. Vaccine, obviously, even before it came out, people were talking about how it was going to have a tracking, chip inside it. And, of course, these people don't realize that we all have phones that track us every day of the year. We were hearing things about how the vaccine is shedding onto the unvaccinated. You even had an article I read about how unvaccinated people will start wearing masks to protect themselves from the vaccinated. Now, there's no live virus in this vaccine. Even vaccines that have live viruses in them, like measles, that's a trope, an anti-vaccine trope that we've heard for years, that the live measles vaccine can shed to unvaccinated, even though there's literally been not one documented case in human history of an outbreak starting from measles vaccine shedding to another person. It's literally not one case, but that's technically impossible with COVID because the COVID vaccine doesn't have a live virus. And so that's another sort of trope that we're seeing right now. We see also Alex Berenson, speaking of him, he had this conspiracy theory that the vaccine was leading to rising cases when it initially enters a population. Like that was his theory, that all of a sudden it would actually create cases. Now, of course, in California, we started vaccinating in January, and our cases immediately started going down, which completely debunks that ridiculous theory. And also, people were claiming that India didn't start vaccinating until, their latest surge started right after they started vaccinating, which is also completely untrue. And India actually had a very low vaccination rate of under 10% when this new outbreak tragically started. So that's another thing we're seeing. As far as overall conspiracy theories and misinformation, one of the big ones is that, people will say, well, it's a 99.7 survival rate, which is actually technically impossible in most areas, especially the United States and Britain. You would have to have like billions more people living in the country that don't even live there. Masks don't work. Of course, we see that people are claiming the PCR testing is manipulated. There's one account that's spreading that people are intentionally changing the PCR testing to manipulate whether or not there's a pandemic or not. Like that could actually change who dies. One of the bigger ones there's a pretty interesting one that just tweeted about today. There's one of those accounts I was telling you about, known as Ethical Skeptic. We call him Unethical Skeptic, but he has a conspiracy theory. This is really one of the most insane things. he believes that COVID began in 2018 and that China and half the world, including Australia, has been hiding that fact for about 2 years. And that's why they have lower rates than the Western world.
And probably no real evidence for this, right?
Well, if you see my tweet today, I believe there's a YouTube video about it. So I don't know if you consider that evidence. Yeah.
Okay, well.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is a legitimate account that has tens of thousands of followers that trust him. And he's spreading this information. I mean, it's laughable to us as irrational people, but he's also someone who's been spreading the idea that half of the excess deaths were from lockdowns and not from COVID. And that's another trope. For a while, there was this theory that only 6% of the COVID deaths were actually from COVID, because only 6% of the death certificates only had COVID listed on them. And it turns out that those were incomplete death certificates. Like COVID doesn't kill you. You die from something like respiratory failure or pneumonia. Just like AIDS doesn't kill you, you die from pneumonia. But on the death certificate, so writing just COVID, that's incomplete. You have to write exactly what was the mechanism that killed you. And so they misrepresented that, when the majority of COVID deaths are like from 49% are pneumonia, 38% are respiratory failure. And obviously, if you have diabetes and if you have, obesity, these things all contribute. But that doesn't mean that 94% of the recorded COVID deaths were faked. And we have the excess deaths in our country that correlate almost exactly with the COVID deaths to prove that. So, it's these ridiculous things that they sort of surface pretty much every day. You see them. And sadly, there's not much you can do, because the internet, like I said, is a place of echo chambers. And inside the echo chambers, they're going to continue to spread this misinformation.
I cover and talk to people about, a lot of conspiracy theories and stuff. And one thing about the COVID conspiracy theories that really has fascinated me is how quickly people shifted. I remember early on when people were claiming that this was going to be an apocalyptic level event and there'd only be lone survivors and you got to buy your food buckets. And then almost on a dime, they all switched and like, oh, it's all fake. It's all fake. I don't know if this is a question. I'm sorry. This might be just more of a comment. Like, I'm still fascinated by that switch and how their audience and their followers didn't find that jarring. Like, do you have any thoughts about how can people shift direction so quickly and their followers just go along with them?
It is pretty interesting. And again, going back to someone like Alex Branson, I remember he was one of those people originally tweeting 1 in 50 people are going to die. And then I think he started to realize that, there's this sort of right-wing libertarian anti-vax world that I can really exploit. And he went with that. Yeah, it is kind of crazy to see that at the beginning there was a lot of unknown, and unknown things create fear. And it's true, we had a lot of fear at the beginning because we didn't know. But at the same time, we didn't know. And so, the smart thing to do when you don't know is not to just be like, hopefully it'll be okay. I think the smart thing to do is to prepare and to take action. Because if you don't, and let's say you do nothing, and then it is bad, or even just as bad as COVID was, you're still going to see all those consequences you now blame on the actions we took. For example, what's interesting is that a lot of the mitigation, the mobility changes, people not going outside, going to stores, going to bars, going to restaurants, like a significant majority of that occurred before a single lockdown order was given. People were voluntarily staying in their homes, staying away from crowds, not going to movie theaters, not going to malls. A lot of businesses were closing, the cruise industry shut down, the NBA shut down, NCAA tournament was canceled, conferences, conventions were shut down. These are all before a single lockdown. Malls were closing, casinos were closing, movie theaters were closing. And basically, like here in California, nobody was at bars, nobody was at clubs, restaurants were very, had low visitors. And And so what happened is that actually voluntary distancing, voluntary mobility changes drove that early period in March and April and even May. And so when people blame the consequences of that, which were significant consequences economically to businesses on lockdowns, they don't realize that if you don't have a lockdown, people aren't just going to be like, well, I guess I'm going to go out to this, Taylor Swift concert. It's just what people don't understand is if you don't like one thing, there has to be something else. Because if you do nothing, it can be equally or bad or worse. And there's the argument that can be made, if you don't do anything and the deaths start piling up and the cases start spreading, the fear among the population will get even worse. And as you know, we had a president at that time where half the population was going to blame him for anything. And a lot of it rightfully so, but I try to stay away from politics. But at the same time, imagine if Trump had done nothing or hadn't, taken action, how angry and scared a lot of people would be. So it was a really difficult situation. And I just for me, this is more of a subjective debate, but when I get into the sort of lockdown debate or even like the mandate debate with masks, a lot of this stuff, the nuance gets lost and it becomes this black and white thing. Lockdown's bad, mask mandates are mask bad. It's not about that. It's not about good or bad. Nobody wants lockdowns. Nobody wants to forcibly shut down businesses. There's not anyone who enjoys any of this. I mean, maybe there's one guy, but the point is, we're not arguing for those things. We're just arguing, well, the alternative could be worse. And sometimes you have two bad choices and you have to pick the best, worst choice, if that makes sense.
Do you have any thoughts or opinions about the mainstream media's role in kind of spreading some of these COVID conspiracy theories and maybe what they should learn going forward?
So that's where a lot of the people I've been fighting against have some actual good points, because the media hasn't done a great job, when it comes to COVID. But my response to that is it's the media. What else do you expect? I mean, in any kind of tragedy or in any kind of pandemic, any kind of situation, they're going to take advantage of it to sell, newspapers or, ratings. And so they're always going to sort of exaggerate things. But yeah, they had a lot of irresponsible reporting that drove fear, but also spread misinformation. I don't think they did a good job at all. And it's in the future. I mean, I don't know what the answer is. But the alternative was, sadly, we had a lot of online media, independent media that wasn't doing any better on the other side. So, and those are the people that I've encountered. So mainstream media, not good, but neither have the sort of alternative experts, quote unquote, that were calling them out. It's okay to call them out, but when you're equally spreading misinformation yourself, that's a little hypocritical.
I don't know if this is true or not, but I do feel like there is a certain kind of thread of like anti-science in a lot of Americans, or maybe it's also just like a lack of basic understanding of science. Do you think that Americans are particularly susceptible to this kind of stuff?
Sadly, I do. Although we do see it in Europe a lot as well, when it comes to especially vaccine sentiment. Although ironically, in places like Sweden, we don't. Sweden is the one place that didn't lock down and was used as this big example of what you could do by not locking down. But they actually have 97% childhood vaccination rates. And the majority of the country just vaccinates their children with no mandates. They have no mandates there, like we do in America. And that's actually a good example of a country that listens to government health recommendations, which is probably one of the reasons they could just recommend staying at home instead of creating a mandate. But as far as anti-science in America, it's been growing. And unfortunately, it's led by this anti-vax movement. It's led by a lot of sort of right-wing libertarian groups who are, quote unquote, for medical freedom, which is just basically a fake word that was created to make anti-vaccine propaganda feel like it's a honorable thing, like you're fighting for medical freedom. That sounds a lot better than fighting against vaccines, right? In the mainstream media. And basically what medical freedom is, So a lot of people say, I'm not anti-vaccine, I'm just pro-medical freedom. But if you ask a single person who says that, well, what vaccines, if you're not anti-vaccine, what vaccines are you for? What vaccines do you recommend? Do you advocate for? Generally, you're not going to get an answer because that person is almost certainly anti-vaccine. And what's the driver of all this? Well, there's two things, and they've all sort of happened at the same time. One, we have the rise of the internet and social media. And, there used to be conspiracy theorists. I mean, there were always conspiracy theorists, but they used to be like the guy on the street corner holding the cardboard sign, or, your crazy alcoholic uncle who is spouting off insane conspiracy theories about, the flat earth or 9/11 or JFK. But now we have the internet, and we have YouTube, and we have Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and all social media. And you're able to have that guy carrying the cardboard sign is able to say something or make a video, and millions of people watch it. And sadly, there's a lot of vulnerable people out there looking for answers for the world when the easiest answer is not something they want to believe. And there's a lot of contrarians out there against government and want to blame the government for everything. So the internet's brought all these people together, and it's created this mass wave of misinformation and conspiracy theories and anti-science sentiment like you're talking about, and specifically in the United States. And then the second thing is that a number of people have recognized that this huge audience exists, and they've taken advantage of it. And they've created an entire industry to exploit these people and profit off them. And so if you go on Amazon and you look at the top 20 books on vaccination, the overwhelming majority of them are anti-vaccine books. And the anti-vaccine movies are coming out in documentaries, quote unquote, all over the place, and conventions. And these people are making a lot of money, millions of dollars. And they're sort of partnering with this global, quote unquote, wellness industry. And they're profiting off it. So we have, again, a growing wave of people, vulnerable people that are using the internet and susceptible to this information. And then we have people selling it to them. That is growing. So it's sort of all inevitable. And the problem is that the people fighting it, like myself, but I'm not like an expert, I'm doing my best, but I'm only one person. But the problem is, like, doctors and scientists, they're great at what they do, but they haven't really been trained at fighting this misinformation. And it's a unique skill to fight anti-vax tropes or anti-science tropes. And they speak in sort of, they know the technical terms, they know the mechanisms of the vaccines. I couldn't tell you how that stuff works. But I do know how to counter misinformation about the vaccine court or about the VAERS system, which is the vaccine reporting system where you report adverse events. Whereas, not everyone understands the mechanics of all this stuff. And that's why people like Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's become probably the most prominent anti-vaxxer in America, always are trying to get these debates going, these public debates with scientists or doctors, because they know that they'll be wrong, that he's going to be wrong on the actual science, but he can make himself look better by, shouting out these talking points that the doctors or scientists may have trouble refuting at the exact time he says them, because he's a lawyer and he knows how to win debates. Winning a debate and being right are not necessarily the same thing. A good debater can prove the earth is flat against a bad debater. And so what people like that are trying to do is to, again, create publicity stunts and videos that they can then share on their feed. So yeah, you're exactly right. Anti-science movement is growing in America. COVID has only brought it out more. And now there's no trust in the CDC. And again, I'm not going to defend the CDC. They've made some definitely messaging errors during this pandemic. But the problem is, where do we go from here? How do we get that? How do we get that trust back? It's a very hard question. I don't have the answer.
So going back to something you said earlier, this is something that kind of fascinates me. The folks that don't believe in germ theory, what do they believe? How do they believe this stuff works? I remember one guy saying that viruses came from space. I really enjoyed that one. They drift down and rain down upon us.
I haven't heard that one before. How exactly would it come? So they're alien diseases?
There's a lot of questions. He was saying that the flu season is because we fly through almost like a comet's tail of viruses in space, and that's what causes flu season or cold season or what was causing coronavirus. I should say, please do not take a clip of me saying this. I am not saying this is true. This was just something somebody was saying. And yeah, that was his idea. And I always wonder with people who don't believe in germ theory, well, then how do you explain these things? Is it like back in the medieval times when this is bad smells or what's going on here?
Yeah, I think they believe that the viruses are like inside us and that they're brought on by stress and not transmission between two people. I always ask someone who doesn't believe in that, would you be okay being in the room with someone with Ebola then to test out your theory?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're at the point where you're denying germ theory, there's really nothing you won't believe. And I mean, again, I've been dealing with Holocaust deniers for years, and that is like indisputable history where we have thousands of witnesses and records, and people are denying it. So it's not crazy to see people denying germ theory. But again, it all goes back to the agenda. If you're anti-vaccine and you promote the idea that germ theory is wrong, then it makes sense that vaccines would have no effect.
Do you think that maybe regulating the alternative health market more would help the situation?
Yeah, I mean, there's the irony is, I think the other day someone was tweeting at me about I was talking about the global wellness industry, which is actually makes three times more money than the global farm industry right now. And even the global farm industry, only about, I think, 2 to 3% of it is vaccine. And people think that they make a lot of money off vaccines. I mean, for a percentage of gross, it's actually very small. I mean, what are the things that pharma sells the most of? It's not vaccines. That's not their number one thing. It's Viagra, things like that. But as far as the global wellness industry, so they were commenting, I was saying, the pharma is regulated, pharma is tested and has to go through all these types of checks and balances. And we don't see that with the health and wellness industry. And they were saying, we don't also see fraud with the health and wellness industry. And then I proceeded to link like 50 links of times where that industry was caught with fraud and was, so these things happen. And yeah, the more regulation would help. People are basically selling things with, claims that they cure cancer or do this when they don't. Obviously, they don't. And that is the irony. The people that are attacking pharma, and look, pharma is not perfect. You can be against pharma, but be supportive of vaccines. But yeah, they're attacking pharma, but at the same time defending an industry that's been riddled with fraud and all kinds of, legal issues and immoral things.
So, most likely some people listening to our conversation, they don't believe the virus is real, or they do think that the vaccine is bad. Do you have any messages to them? Like, they're listening to you right now. Do you have any messages for them?
Wow. Getting back to my earlier point about trying to argue with an anti-vaxxer true believer, you're not likely to get anywhere. I've been doing this for years. And I think one time I've had one anti-vaxxer acknowledge I was right about something. That's tough. I think overall you need to have empathy when you have these conversations. Now, sometimes I don't. and I think my fans, or the opposite of what my fans are, would attest to that. And it's hard. Sometimes you get really upset. You get emotional. But having empathy, and for someone who is sincere in their beliefs and is not coming at you harassing you, threatening you, attacking you. I mean, I had people online attacking me for all the most crazy. I've been threatened. People claimed I'm an unemployed wedding photographer. That's the newest one that's been going around.
Oh,
which is strange because I have a full-time job.
What do you want? What? How did that?
I don't know. It's like telephone. It's like telephone. They hear one thing from someone else and they get the wrong information. I've never been a wedding photographer in my life, and I'm certainly not unemployed. But the fact is, it doesn't really matter. Even if I was, how is that? What's the point of doing that? But these are sort of the ad hominem, personal attacks people will do at times when they can't sort of challenge you. But speaking to someone who truly doesn't believe the virus doesn't exist, I would ask them, well, what do you think all these people are dying from? We have, hundreds of thousands of excess deaths, not just COVID deaths, but deaths above what we should have this year. And they're happening at the exact time, especially in the spring when it first started. You can see, if you look at the graphs, and I have these graphs that correlate the deaths to COVID to the exact times that the excess deaths correlate to the exact times people were dying of COVID. It really can't be anything else. And that's another thing. People will say that the deaths they're actually lockdown deaths. It makes no legitimate sense that people would start dying of lockdowns the first week of lockdowns when we're dying of COVID that same time. No other death, and people say, well, they're replacing other deaths, but no other cause of death has gone down for that to be true. And as far as the vaccine, we are seeing now real world evidence of how amazing the vaccine's working. I live in California, and, we've made mistakes with COVID. I've defended California from all kinds of vicious attacks over the last year, but I admit we've made some mistakes, and I've called out those mistakes. But when it comes to the vaccination, we've done great. We have 2/3 of the state now with at least one vaccine dose. We have, I think, like the lowest positivity rate in the continental United States. And there's a new sort of hope and happiness that I see going around the state. Now, you see that everywhere where vaccines are heavy, and the real test will be, of course, in the summer and the fall, when we see if, and I don't think we will, but surges come back in the vaccinated, or hospitalizations and deaths come back. Now, if that doesn't happen and you still are denying that the vaccines work, I'm not sure what else we can say.
Well, thank you so much for your time today and the work you're doing. I really appreciate it. People want to learn more about you and what you're doing. Where should they go?
Great. Thanks. And thanks for having me. Well, you can find me on Twitter at @TheReal_Truther, @TheReal_Truther. And I'm also on Facebook, The Real Truther. And I really appreciate your time and having me on today. It's been a great and fun.
I'm Jason Rigdon, and you have been listening to episode number 20 of the Podcast of Mystery, originally transmitted on Wednesday, July 7th, 2021. If you want more information about me, this show, or my guests, please visit podcastofmystery.com. Tune in next Friday when I will be talking with Noah, the Time Traveler. If you have a guest or a topic that you would like to hear on this show, please email podofmystery@gmail.com. You can send any feedback or comments to that same address. This audio program is copyrighted by me, Jason Rigdon, in 2021, and is freely available under the Creative Commons Attribution License. And don't forget to leave the Podcast of Mystery a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Thank you for listening.